In this video, going to be taking a look at the primary results for August 14th, 2018. And this video is going to focus on how the progressive candidates did. These are going to be candidates that were endorsed by groups such as the Justice Democrats and Our Revolution. And across the board, the progressives did very well on this night. So starting off here, going to go into the Vermont governor Democratic primary. The Justice Democrat, Christine Hallquist, doing very well, getting almost half of the vote. She is a member of the LGBTQ community. If she goes on and wins the general election, which is certainly a possibility in a state like Vermont, which tends to lean in a more Democratic direction, it would be the first transgender governor in the U.S. history. And then on the Republican side, you have incumbent Phil Scott, and a lot more turnout on the Democrat side. Not a huge surprise there, considering it is the state of Vermont. And you also had Bernie Sanders to boost turnout for the Democrats as well. But a considerable gap there. Should be somewhat competitive, certainly. And I think a lot of this could potentially come down to how much weight Bernie Sanders puts behind Christine Hallquist. I'd be surprised if he didn't try to play somewhat of a factor, at least considering Hallquist and Sanders line up on the issues pretty considerably there. So certainly in a state like Vermont that has a lot of love for their Senator Bernie Sanders, that could make a difference here as the Democrats try to win back this governorship. And of course, another progressive candidate that I was just talking about, Bernie Sanders, going on and winning the Democratic primary very convincingly, getting almost about 95% of the vote. And again, not a big surprise there. He's the most popular politician in the United States. And in terms of a senator in their home state, he has the highest favorability rating out of all the senators in Washington. So going on and winning that one in blowout fashion. And he's going to go on and win this one come November, of course, as well. So moving on to the state of Wisconsin. Just one race to report on there, and that's Wisconsin's 1st congressional district, which is a battleground district. Randy Bryce, the Justice Democrat, going on and winning by a fairly healthy margin here, a little over 20% win there for Randy Bryce. Either one of these candidates on the Democratic side would have been a good option. They're both very progressive, but the Justice Democrat endorsed candidate Randy Bryce going on and winning this one. He got a lot of national notoriety early on in this race in his challenge against Paul Ryan, but Paul Ryan unfortunately backed out of this one. I would have loved to see how that dynamic would have played itself out, but instead of Paul Ryan, you're going to have Brian Steele on the Republicans side, and Republicans getting a bit more turnout, at least as of this point. Also, they have more precincts in, which is another reason why they're ahead in the total vote number. It's probably going to be relatively close between the total votes cast on each side in this primary, and I expect this to be a very competitive race come November. Definitely one to keep an eye on. So moving on to the state of Minnesota. And that gets us to the 5th congressional district there in Minnesota, where we have a Justice Democrat and an Our Revolution candidate in Ilhan Omar running away with this one. A very solid result. This is Keith Ellison's former district. Of course, Keith Ellison running for Attorney General, so giving up his congressional seat there, and a very safe Democratic seat. You can see in the turnout, almost about 130,000 votes on the Democrat side, about 14,000 on the Republican side. So Ilhan Omar going to win this one come November. And that's another Muslim woman that's going to be represented in Congress. Rashida Tlaib in Detroit's 13th congressional district won last week. So that's 2 Muslim women that are going to certainly go on and win their November elections and be in Congress, representing the first Muslim women in the House of Representatives, which is kind of a cool situation, just like you could have over in Vermont with the first LGBTQ community member being the governor of a state. So moving on to another Minnesota result, and that's the Attorney General position there, and Keith Ellison running away with this one. He has the name recognition. Not a big surprise here to have this progressive candidate go on and do very well. And those are all the results for Minnesota, and those are all of the Justice Democrat and or Our Revolution candidates that we had on the board here. But one other progressive candidate that I wanted to talk about, that's over in the state of Connecticut. So scrolling down here, Connecticut's 5th congressional district, I'm really happy to see Jahana Hayes go on and win this primary. She was National Teacher of the Year. She was putting her name in this one early, and then she got a challenge from Mary Glassman, who I'd say probably isn't quite as a progressive candidate as Jahana Hayes, but Hayes going on her grassroots campaign, able to win this one at the end of the day by a fairly healthy margin here. She's ahead by about 18% of the vote right now. But it is nice to see her go on and win this one. She wasn't endorsed, like I said, by the Justice Democrats or Our Revolution, but she did have other progressive groups backing her candidacy. So as you can see, across the board, a clean sweep for the progressive candidates that were endorsed specifically by groups like the Justice Democrats and Our Revolution. It'll be interesting to see what kind of articles we get from the establishment media in the papers tomorrow, see how they report on this situation to say if the progressive movement is doing well here, because obviously across the board they had very convincing wins. Whenever the progressive candidates don't do as well, they always print the stories that everything isn't going to plan for them. So I wonder if we'll get the reverse of that. I highly doubt it for some reason, but still going to be keeping our eyes out for that. But still, nonetheless, a great day here for the progressive candidates. And I can't wait to see how a lot of these races turn out come November, because a number of these results could be very competitive elections, so certainly ones to keep an eye on. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. I'm going to make a couple more videos. One's going to talk about the Senate and governor's races in these states, and then also I'm going to make a video covering all of the potentially competitive House districts and how those primary votes tallied out. So if you want to check those out, you can get those over on my YouTube channel. Subscribe for more, and I hope to see you guys back here for future videos.